Hello and welcome to another little mini-series, this time on Third Age Total War Divide and Conquer. And to those of you that know much about Divide and Conquer, there's loads and loads of ways to play the game. You can use the Total War submod and do absolutely anything in your current region. You can just play as Gondor and then roll over everyone, etc, etc. It's really fun, and I must admit it's probably one of my, in total, one of my favourite games, and I've played nearly thousands of hours stuck in this mod alone. And I'm going to impart some of my knowledge of my many hours playing Divide and Conquer, and we're starting with the faction that won the vote that I was going to start a campaign on, but unfortunately because 2.3 is so close now, I decided let's start doing a little few tips and tricks on how to play as certain factions in Divide and Conquer. And we're looking at the newest faction, well currently before 2.3 comes out, the Ar-Adunaim, who used to be the Corsairs of Umbar. So a few things to note about the Ar-Adunaim: you do not start in Umbar. The only reason I have currently control of Umbar is because I took the entire army that was residing here next to the boats, and we besieged Umbar and we claimed it for ourselves. So a few things to know about the Ar-Adunaim. Well, firstly, let's go into a bit of lore. Let's show that I'm not as supposedly knows how to play the game. I know a lot of Lord of the Rings lore as well. So the Ar-Adunaim are dark or black Númenóreans, the opposite of the faithful, the Dunedain of Dol Amroth, Gondor, and of the ruins of Arnor. So these were the Númenóreans who followed the Golden King Ar-Pharazôn back in the time of the Second Age, when Sauron came and corrupted Númenor, after he was originally taken as a prisoner, and in a few years slowly became the most prized advisor to the Golden King. And he advised the king to assault Valinor in the very west, far off the map as so far. And unfortunately, due to the wrath of the gods, Númenor and all the Black Númenóreans were considered obliterated at the time of the downfall of Arnor. Sauron was defeated and lost his physical form and can no longer take physical shape. But that did not stop him, and that did not stop the few the small Black Númenórean presence that remained in Middle-earth at the time, because some Númenóreans, including the Faithful, the 7 ships of the Faithful led by Elendil that came to Middle-earth, made Gondor, and that included Rohan for a time, and then also made the region of Arnor, and that then leads to what started as the and then nearing the end of the Second Age, or by some time in the Third Age, some Númenóreans who used to be known as the Faithful, became the traitors of Castamere. Because those of you who don't know much about Castamere or about this mod, there used to be a general, well, not a general, but there used to be a unit in Umbar, or the Haven of Umbar, known as Castamere's Chosen. And that's what this unit is now, the Ar-Adunaim Armsmen. So basically, Castamere was a major key piece to Umbar back in the day. And he helped raid quite a few regions of Gondor and helped the rebellion in Umbar, making the Corsairs more servient to Sauron. Although obviously their own greed was their true downfall. But in this game, in Divide and Conquer in particular, the Ar-Adunaim, these do not technically exist. This is one of the only non-canon factions that actually exist at this time in this game. Another one of the factions will probably be Dorwinion, because they weren't at all military, and they weren't actually at war with Rune either. Rune and Dorwinion actually had a steady alliance at the time, I believe, even though Dorwinion was hardly ever talked about. And then there's the Anduin as well. There wasn't as many like Beornings and hobbits living in Anduin at the time, and then obviously like the Brelanders, they're not an actual faction, etc, etc. But looking back, so as I said, we took Umbar for the reason that as the Ar-Adunaim, you start with a full stack army led by 3 great generals. Ar-Gimmelkard, your faction leader, Lord Gimmelzor, which you talked about not too long ago, your faction heir, and then the second son to Gimmelkard, Gimmelthon. And each of these generals has their own unique bodyguard. Nothing like the basic bodyguards of the Ar-Adunaim. They have the Nanuinaro Royal Guard for our faction leader, an extremely defensive unit. that has very good potential when using his shield wall and his special ability. Then there's Gimel Zor, as I said, using the Ar-Adunaim armsman, extremely defensive, again, a sword and board unit. Better in deserts, but of course that's due to their more south-run heritage.
Orders.
And then there's Gimel Thon, who has Baruthiel's Rangers, which, unlike most units, is actually an AOR unit. And so is Gimel Card's body-wise. He requires a Various. And Various for the Ar-Adunaim means a Numenorian stronghold. So key Numenorian settlements, such as Umbar, Dol Amroth, Minas Tirith, both sides of Osgiliath, Minas Morgul, I think Barad-dûr, not Morannon though, I don't believe. Then there's also Deadman's Dyke / Fornost. Numinas, I think, is on the list, though might not be, because it is more of a Dunedain settlement than a Numenorian settlement. And then there's both sides of Farbad. But other than that, that's I believe the only regions. I'm very likely to be wrong on this, so don't take my words for it. Because I may be wrong.
Yes.
But you start with a extremely tanky, defensive anti-cavalry unit, which inspires nearby troops, which makes them even better. You've got a extremely powerful flanking sword and board unit that can even hold its own, even though it is meant to be used as more of a flanking unit than a hold the ground unit. And then a extremely deadly ranger unit, which can quickly hide in deserts, anywhere really. It can hide, it says even there, can hide anywhere. Better in woods and deserts, because they can only be recruited in woodland and desert regions. But still, they are really, really good. And again, they are AOR. The only actually, Gimel Card and Gimel Thon are both AOR. Gimel Zor's unit, however, the Ar-Adunaim armsmen, oh yeah, they require a coastal region, okay. They're all AOR units. I take back what I was about to say. And then you have an entire army stack of Rozodan units between footmen, halberdiers, and crossbowmen, and we'll talk about what their key role is in the battle. But they also get 3 other units, some Abrazanim, the second tier, your elite, your branching into elite tier units. So you get some Nardu Tariq, an extremely tanky and yet even effective against armor units, and are not to be underestimated. Their small attack stat is not to be underestimated because again they are anti-armor, and they have really strong protection against arrows from the front line with their giant shields. Then we have the Narduz. I'm gonna butcher these names. I'm gonna say that now. Narduzagar, Abrazanim Narduzagar. They're a mixture between the Ar-Adunaim armsmen and the basic Nardu Tariq, in which they are strong. They have massive attack stats, but they have very weak defenses in contrast, because they do have a mix between armor and defense skill. So yes, they are good in battle, but they are not to be as reliable in defending as the Nardu Tariq are against arrows, but are also more are able to survive more against while in combat because of their increased attack stats. So they're more likely to kill things before they get killed. And then you have the archer unit, the Nardu Barwib. I think I said that right, the Nardu Barwib. And they're just your middle tier archers. Obviously, you've got your crossbowmen first, and your as you know, you've got your.
My lord.
I've already forgotten what they renamed them to, but if you go into here, Azra Zaire, that's it. They renamed the Corsairs to be known as Azra Zaire, and you can get them from the meeting hall because they're pretty weak units. But you get the raiders and the archers. These archers are your base tier, really weak archers. Then you have your Rozodan crossbowmen, which are pretty reasonable crossbowmen. Most crossbowmen are weak, but if allowed to attack on the flanks and not interrupted, they can do a lot of damage. Then you've obviously got the Nardu Wimwib, who are more defensive than the Baruthiel Rangers, so they can hold out more against an enemy assault, but do not think that they will actually hold out on their own in hand-to-hand combat, because they only got 6 melee attack. They've got the same attack as the Nardu Tariq, but have actually they've got more defense because they've got a shield as well, so they're not that bad. They got more defense than the Narduza guy in hand-to-hand, so that they're kind of useful in hand-to-hand combat. But then again, you have Rozodan footmen, your spear and shield units. Got some halberdiers, some strong anti-armor and anti-cavalry units, and then again the crossbowmen effective against armor, but they're crossbowmen, so don't put too much faith into them. and you'll always have a mixture between footmen, halberdiers, and crossbowmen. You won't always have the same selection as I have right now. Right now I have 4 footmen, 3 crossbows, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 halberdiers. Sometimes you can get 7 footmen, 5 halberdiers, and then excess crossbowmen, or 5 crossbowmen, 7 crossbowmen. It is always random.
Orders.
There was even
Yes,
said
my
by
lord.
the leader of the mod team, that it is all random. So then, a few tips and tricks. All the way back to tips and tricks. The reason we have Umbar is because it is recommended, for those of you that are starting playing Divide and Conquer, to take Umbar. Yes, you can start absolutely
orders, my
anywhere.
lord.
You're the one faction that starts with 0 regions. You are a horde nation, the only horde nation in the game, and you can take any region on any part on the map, and it doesn't matter wherever you go. Because once you have chosen a region to be your first region, that region will become your capital, and then you are no longer not a rebel, a horde nation. That means you no longer will be making free upkeep for all your units. You will start paying for your upkeep. As you can see, we're actually losing a bit of pocket money just keeping our full army around. The same can be said about the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm, how when you play as them they start in Erebor, but obviously they have their expedition that makes them have to go to Khazad-dûm East. You are unrestricted. You can go anywhere and everywhere. Some people who have seen the mod leader, I'm going to butcher your name, sorry, Alakir Galadurthan, he started his campaign about 60 episodes ago, taking Royal Farbad, which isn't a bad idea in retrospect, until you realise Dunland is likely to already have Royal Farbad by the time you have your army reach Farbad. So, is it a good idea to go take Farbad? Because you're basically, this region isn't just like Umbar, where it's isolated. It's literally the kingpin between Dunland and Bree. Without these regions, Dunland and Bree can't reach each other, so they'll fight whatever in their way to get to each other. That's their mentality. The same could be if you decide to take like Ostithil. It's not blocking Gondor or Mordor, but if you're neighbouring Gondor or Mordor, they're going to want to attack you unless you've allied to them. Which is another thing to note. You start with no alliances and no enemies. The only reason you're an enemy to the independent realms is because everyone starts as an enemy to the independent realms. No one likes rebels. But yeah, you are free in whatever you want to do. You could go and just immediately attack the Haradrim. Just forget about Umbar, go straight for Fina Bell. Go attack Tar Ajif. Just defeat Harad then and there. So then you can move on and claim the rest of the regions unhindered by their rule. Or you could just go up to Cannes, you can go into Mordor, go into take Minas Tirith, you can go to take Edoras, Hornburg, you can go to take Isengard, you can go absolutely anywhere. But the most key regions, I say, is the way you need to focus upon taking, if you're starting as the Ar-Adunaim, is Umbar, if you just want an easy starting faction campaign. Secondly, I would recommend trying to take Etheland or Dol Amroth, because they will generate you extremely powerful units. And I mean that through the one key building that only Umbar can make, the auxiliary outposts. Now these outposts allow you to build constriction units from certain settlements. So if I was in like Tal Al-Jaf, I could make the auxiliary outpost or the constriction camp, and I could get Southron Lancers and Southron Pikemen, which means I get a strong pikeman unit, which is really good against mounts and can hold their own against most hand-to-hand fighters, and I would get cavalry. And another thing to note is, you have no starting cavalry. If you like playing with cavalry, the Ar-Adunaim are not for you, because you will not have any cavalry options until the very, very late game, or if you start taking regions from other factions and take them away from you. The only factions I know to give you these special units are Harad, Khand, because Khand has their own special outpost you can make. I believe you can get units from Rune, but don't take my word on it. You can get units from Dol Amroth and Gondor, and from Enedwaith, but more importantly, just from what I know, is from Siduri, the Saruline mercenaries. Unfortunately, I haven't done enough testing with the Ar-Adunaim or just with the Corsairs of Umbar outside of Gondor and Harad to really know what else they have. I know the Dunedain can't be constricted, can't become conscripts. I don't think you can do the same with the Beornings or the Anduin. All I know is the constriction units are more restricted than the Beacon of Hope system for the Dunedain. But to be honest, you don't really need them because you're nowhere near as restricted as the Dunedain are. You can build all of your base building there, all your elite units anywhere, but your AOR units or units from other factions can only come from their base regions. That's just a little bit of knowledge from the horse's mouth, apparently. But other than that, key settlements you want to go for. Again, try and take settlements in Gondor because you can get a lot of constriction units. You can get the basic militia units, and if you like the Ar-Adunaim design and you like seeing them on other factions, go straight for Gondor because they militia units, their territorial guardsmen, their archer militia, their cavalry militia, and their basic Gondor militia, they all get an Ar-Adunaim design to them, and when they get armor upgrades, they look even nicer. Oh, I must admit, the first time I saw them, I was awestruck by how how high quality they were. They were crisp. It was amazing. Yeah, other than that, if you do start in Umbar, best thing to do, just take these rebel settlements. Oh yeah, another thing to note, you do start with a diplomat, and you do start with a spy. This is the current, because Umbar doesn't have a settlement that, or anything that allows you to get more diplomats, yet this diplomat needs protecting more than anything else. You need to know where he is at all times, otherwise you're going to lose track of him, and if you want to do a certain quest or get an alliance with someone, if you're not near them, technically you're screwed, but there's nothing stopping you from just cheating him over there. But yeah, this diplomat allows you to difference between life and death with some factions, because you start with no alliance with anyone. No one knows of your existence. Harad might get a whiff of your foul scent the closer you come to them, but other than that, if you ally with Harad, you're just going to basically do what you normally do when you played as the Corsairs of Umbar back in the day. You just go and attack Dol Amroth, go and attack Gondor. It'd just be an easy campaign, and it's not really that fun, to be honest.
Orders, yes.
Yes.
I would recommend, if you are going to play as Umbar and start in Umbar, is to take the regions of Ankaragmir and Finabel from Harad, because once the barracks event hits, you get some really, really nice units. And by that I mean you get Serpent Guard, you get Hashari, you get Trollmen, and above all else, you get Mumakil. Yes, that's right, you can make Mumakil from Finabel and Ankaragmir as if you were Harad itself. Yeah, that's pretty busted right there. That is pretty busted. You can make the overall strongest unit in the game. Sauron comes close, but you can only make one. You can only get one of him. You can get a whole army of Mumakil, and they are devastating. But yeah, those are the main tips I can think of for Umbar on the battle map. Thinking about buildings to start off with, like most factions. Actually, thinking about buildings. If you do start in Umbar, I would recommend go straight for the mines. Pay 4,500 to get 500 a turn. It pays itself off in 9 turns. So in 15 turns after you start building it. So if I was to continue to turn 21, I would have paid off my investment into the mines. In fact, no, it'd be less turns than that because it makes even more money. And another thing to note, because you start in Umbar, you do get your Umbric units, the Azazir Savages, Warriors, that you get some Haradrim units, I don't know why, but you do. And then obviously there's the Azazir as well. Because, as you may not guess, the King's Men are a dead race. A dead sub-faction of the Númenóreans. They no longer exist in canon, or Lord of the Rings canon. So the world knows nothing of them. Only the Dunedain know scattered remnants of their past, but they have no culture affiliation with them. So only these 3 key settlements of Umbar, or of the Ar-Adunaim, actually have any knowledge of the Black Númenóreans and of their dark culture. You'd think Mordor might have the same thing, but no, they're full followers of Melkor over there. They follow Sauron to a whim, but you are free of Sauron's grasp. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. And obviously, for domination, it's like playing in Total War. You have no restrictions on what you can take, what you can kill. All you need to do is hold 60 regions, or if it's a short campaign, it's 30 or 40 regions. So yeah, you have just have fun as Umbar, or as the Ar-Adunaim, as is the best thing to do. Just go in, just go in absolutely random area, do whatever the hell you want there, and just have a lot of fun. It's the best thing to do with the Ar-Adunaim. But it's also a good thing to note is that you never want to just make a base region like let's say you went to attack Matrife and you took it. Then what do? You think you want to go to other rebel regions and start attacking them and start getting more land. You don't want to stay in your capital. The longer you sit in your capital, it's like playing as like Dog Guldur, when you just start with your capital Dog Guldur and no other regions. You don't just want to sit there and do nothing because you'll be losing money. Like right now, we have Umbar and we're losing 1100 every turn. So never just sit in your capital twiddling your thumbs. Just keep your key general inside and he'll keep the population happy. That's enough. Maybe keep a few units back just to keep the population a little bit happier. It just depends on, like, yeah, cultural unrest is the main problem you'll always face as the Ar-Adunaim. You will always have cultural unrest problems. Don't think you're ever out of the blue with that. Only by building the Dark Sanctuary, your culture building, will you save yourself from total devastation. But another key thing to learn about the Ar-Adunaim is they are the only faction that, if you lose every single settlement, you do not lose. Instead, you go back to being a horde nation, and you can go back into roaming and taking whatever you want. Obviously, if that ever happens, you may be screwed. But yeah, the only way you can truly die is if you lose all of your generals. You lose all of your family tree. You're one of the few evil nations that actually has a family tree, and it is really important to notice that you can go and do whatever the hell you want as the Ar-Adunaim, because it even shows on their large building browser. You can get the House of Kings in Fornos. You can go and rebuild Fornos Iran if you wanted to, and get your Nanu Royal Knights. You can go and build the auxiliary outposts like it's any region. And as I said, in the desert region, you can make Hashare, Serpent Guard, Trollmen. You just make 3 extremely OP units that each have their own source of power. You can go into Canned and make every unit from Canned, because, you know, Canned is just everyone's bitch apparently. And then you can even go to Farbad and rebuild the bridge of Farbad. Do whatever the hell you please, because I am not going to say what you need to do as Umbar. Yes, I can say you can go here and there like I kind of have, but with Umbar, as the Ar-Adunaim, you are unrestricted in anything you do. So this is probably the easiest of all the little tips and tricks I'm going to give to every single person that's watching this video. Another faction like Isengard would be a little bit more difficult, because you could say, let's just go and harass Rohan, but then you have the problem with Enedwife slowly coming up behind you and slowly breaking you down, because Dunland does nothing. Dunland does jack shit, and I'm not afraid to say that. They do nothing in their quest to try and stop Enedwife. They are weak and pathetic. You only use the Dunland endings to your own goal as Isengard. Let's just leave it at that. Dunland are terrible. You cannot leave them as an ally for long. It's better to take their lands for yourself, honestly, in my honest opinion, as Isengard. But we'll go into more as to why that in the future, when we're talking more about Isengard. But yeah, these tips and tricks should be quite relatively useful, even through patch 2.3. And the other factions I will be going through before 2.3 is released will be factions that I believe I know or I believe will have either very few changes, or their changes will not change their gameplay, or they're going to get 0 changes because they've been recently updated. Like the Ar-Adunaim, like Harad, like Rune, like Canned. All 4 of these nations are going to be my top 4 priority on the list, because they've already had their major updates and are already just awaiting some more things to happen to them. So yeah, the Ar-Adunaim, go wild, go wherever you want, do whatever you want. It's fun. No matter where you go, it's always fun. But be warned, if you prefer a smaller campaign, if you prefer to just have complete domination over a faction, it is not recommended you start as the Ar-Adunaim, because you will have to fight and scrape and kill and keep killing and die a few times before you actually win with the Ar-Adunaim. You will lose a lot and a lot more before you finally realise, this faction's actually got some good things, because until the barracks event, you are really restricted, because again, your Kingsmen population, your culture is nowhere. the only units you'll be able to make are conscripts from the auxiliary outposts, because they do not require any culture. They're the only units that don't require any culture until you get to the Barracks of True Sons. But by the time of the Barracks event, you'll be able to get the Dark Sanctuaries cheaper and faster with the Mason's Hall at their full potential. So you shouldn't have much problems after the game starts. Once the gears start moving, you'll find out the Ar-Adunaim are an unstoppable machine. And probably, if the AI weren't so weak with Umbar, they would be probably the strongest faction in the game. I'm just going to put it out there right now because I honestly believe that. The Elves of Linden and Imladris, they're good, but they have nowhere near the production power of the Ar-Adunaim. So now I'm going to take a quick reprieve, and for you guys it's going to be about a second, as we go into the battle map where I show off every single unit of the Ar-Adunaim and tell you their key strengths and weaknesses. So, see you in a few moments. And now I welcome you all to the battle map, where we are seeing every single unit in the base Ar-Adunaim roster, not including any units from the conscript camps, etc, etc. This is all the units that was found on the Ar-Adunaim roster in the custom battle. And now we're going to go through each and every one of them, and I have put them into 5 separate tiers, not including the siege equipment. I just put them there to show that they do also get different siege equipment. The only differences are their siege equipment are manned by Southrons. Other than that, that's about it. They're exactly the same. So here we go. Let's start off with their basic militia, their Corsairs, or as they're now known as the Azra. So first we have the basic Azra Raiders. Stats not really to be desired. But are on par with most trash Orc units, if not better than most trash Orc units, like the Orc Band, Orc Raiders. They're not meant to be good. They are meant to be used in massive numbers as arrow fodder, mainly. Sometimes you want to use them as just to mount the walls of a settlement while raiding it, and just use them as a distraction to keep enemies, or just keep the AI onto their I can't think of the word. The center point. I've already lost the words. To keep them onto the to keep them distracted. That's it. Let's leave it at that. To keep them distracted and make them lose their focus. Because they have very little armor, but when they start going hand to hand with a defense skill of 4, they can last for a while. These shabby parrots are not to be underestimated. Even at the most bleak of times against elite elves, they can still pack the smallest punch. The smallest punch. Another thing to note is all of the Azra, the Raiders, the Archers, the Savages, and the Warriors are all require coastal regions. You cannot get these anywhere and everywhere. The only units you can get anywhere and everywhere are these 2 tiers right here, not including the Azra Marines. All Azra units can always require a coastal region. Only the Razadon and the Abrazanim can be recruited everywhere. Oh, and our Farazon's Faithful. Everything else is AOR, so you are a massively AOR faction. So make sure to keep that into account. Secondly, you have your first archer unit, the Azra Archers. Again, stats not to be desired. Defense skill slightly better than you'd think. But they... 177 archers firing up to 18 missiles. Even with a low accuracy, it's a human low accuracy, so it's better than most other archers at this tier. And you can get them in massive numbers because they are cheap as hell. They are really cheap. And if you have a lot of early coastal regions, you will find these Azra can be the linchpin between your crossbowmen, which can do massive points of damage to heavily armored units, and then you've got the trash killers. These are your trash killers and are your arrow fodder. You put these both into skirmish modes, and you just let them take all the arrows or siege equipment shots, while your other units are going in to attack them from the flanks. And talking about attacking from the flanks, we look at our first major unit, the Azra Savages. Now these units, don't let their lack of armor fool you. Many people will think the same thing of the Berserkers, but look at where they are, and look at where these guys are. Their stats not only make them effective against armor with their dual-handed cleavers, but also frighten nearby enemy infantry. This alone makes this unit so effective. You could use it in the late game and it would still be so strong, because they do more damage than the Narditaric, which are desperately slower in combat. These savages are extremely good flanking units, and you will most likely want to use these at any portion of the game. Once you get to a point where you feel like you need this other elite unit or this other elite unit, you need this cavalry unit, you need this or this, you may think, let's cut out the savages, because I think we've got enough frightening effects now. Because at a point, the savages do become a bit pointless, because they are, again, these units are not arrow fodder. You do not want these to die to archers, because they have, look at that defense skill. That's double that's the Azai Raiders and the archers put together into one unit of 177 extremely devastating beasts. These are not to be underestimated. They're early tier, but they are deadly. And then we look at their counterparts, the sword and board, the Azazaya warriors. And as you can see, they have slightly more defense than the savages, but only because they house a shield and armor. The defense skill is much worse than the savages. These are meant to hold the line. You use these when you feel like raiders aren't going to hold the line for long enough against like a cavalry charge. These warriors will do a decent job at holding the line, but they are not flanking units. Not flanking units by far. If you ever want to use a flanking unit, you go straight for the savages. That's all I can say. Out of this front row, the savages are the most effective out of all of them. The raiders are the best arrow fodder. The archers are the best arrow fodder killers. Also, they can hide anyway, so they're pretty good ambushers in their own sense. But the warriors are your basic, just sit there and do nothing, while the savages clean up as many kills as possible. And now we come over to tier 2. We're going to start off with the AOR unit, the Harandor Mercenaries. Now these, as you can guess, requires Harandor. For those that have played as Harad or Don Amroth or Gondor will know this unit can only be recruited in the base Harandor regions. But they are so good. Put Azrazir savages, give them armor, make them lose their effect against armor stats, but give them extreme defenses, and you have this unit. And oh, they are really good. Expensive, but really good. Also, you can make them as you can also just buy them as mercenaries, as you can guess by the fact they're mercenaries. But again, they are not to be underestimated. They are really good. But again, they are an AOR unit similar to the savages. So if you ever do make them, consider making a split between the mercenaries and the savages. Both are good, but it's better to have a mixture of the two than have one and then fight against a massive army of archers and stand no chance, or have a giant army of infantry killers and have no way of frightening them to run away. Then we have the Rosadon units we already talked about. We'll go more into detail of them. So the Rosadon footmen, really good total defense skills, really good defense skill, and they are really strong. Not only can they go into a shield wall, so they're already topping the Azazir warriors, which are more aggressive, which makes them lose their potency in defending, but they're also effective against mounts with their spears. So they're already leaps and bounds ahead of what the Azrazir warriors can do with their AOR potential. And these Rosadon are, you may think they're bad at times, but they are better than they look. They are better than they look, is all I'm going to say. Then we have the Halberdiers. These units, I did a lot of testing of these in my early days when the Ar-Adunaim was first released, and I really didn't like them. I didn't like them one bit. I honestly don't really like Halberdier units too much over pikeman units. And I would honestly recommend, if you're going to have a split between the Halberdiers and footmen, try and focus more into the footmen, because the Halberdiers, they are good, but they aren't meant to be used against cavalry, and that's about it. Their effect against armor stat is pretty pointless when they can just be shot down and killed, where the footmen can do exactly the same job against any cavalry unit and are more resilient. I'm not going to lie, they are good though. Don't think just because I've had terrible experiences with them that you're not going to find them really good, because they can hold the line against a lot of strong cavalry. If you're going against Don Amroth, Rohan, an army of Rohirrim Gondor cavalry, or even Harad, you will find these Halberdiers can be good at sometimes. but do protect them with your lives. If you let them fall susceptible to arrows, they won't last long. Because they have no shield, they only have 5 armor stats. That's not enough to save them from a volley of even basic arrows from like basic Ar-Adunaim archers. Next we come to a unique unit, a crossbow unit. Not many crossbow units in the game. The only ones I can think of are the Dwarven crossbows, there's the runic crossbows, and then there's a Ar-Adunaim crossbowman. Oh, and the Winter crossbowmen of Dorwinium, but they're not really counted, are they? They're basically the same as the Easterling crossbows, just a little weaker. But yeah, these crossbows, they're okay. They are okay. They're effective against armor, which makes you want to consider using them a lot. But their defense skill is 2. It's worse than the Ar-Adunaim archers. Yes, they've got more armor. Yes, they've got more melee attack. But you need to really know how to micro these things. Unlike the archers, where you can just leave them and let them shoot at the unit and they'll do pretty good damage. These crossbowmen, if you have them in the back line, shooting behind units, you're not like this unit is going to take a few hits before anything even comes close to it from these crossbows. Right. Because the main thing about crossbows is they are very strange when it comes to this mod. Because just to a game as old as Medieval 2. Because they don't fire like in arcs like they now do in like Total Warhammer 2 or Total Warhammer. They do just shoot straight forward and will actually sometimes pin the heads of some of your ally units if they are behind them. Best thing to do with them is leave them on the backs like normal, but then once you have the time, turn them around, have them flank the opponent, and then have them fire. That is the best thing to do with crossbowmen, in my honest opinion. You can't leave them in the backline and expect them to do damage, because they won't. They will just kill your guys and they won't hurt your opponent in the slightest. It's a sad truth, but it is the truth. But other than that, they're okay. They are okay. They are definitely worth considering over Ar-Adunaim archers. But it's always good to have a mix between archers and crossbowmen, because although crossbowmen are good, you don't want too many of them. If you rely too much on crossbows, you're relying on a match to last a long time. And yes, having a tight army of Ar-Adunaim units is going to be a long battle because they are defensive units, and this is your only aggressive unit at this tier, except for the Harondor Mercs, which again are AOR, and the other units are not AOR. So always keep that in mind. Keep in mind that crossbowmen are good, but don't rely on them to win the battle for you. They cannot. They will not. You need to put your heart and soul into moving these crossbowmen in the right way for them to work. So now looking at the third tier, we're going to start with, again, the AOR units, the Ar-Adunaim Marines. I've only put them at the Barracks Event level tier because they do have the stats of Barracks Event units. Very similar to the Linden Mariners, but in honesty, you can put them right here because they are just as good. They're a mix between the two, really. They are good, but you can get them before the Barracks Event once you start upgrading your ports. And looking at their stats, they're skilled against mounts, but another thing to note is they have a missile attack. That's right, they have javelins. They can throw up to 3 javelins, and they have bonuses against any mounted units. But that's their main attack, and that is their javelin. Their basic attacks are not skilled. They are not skilled against mounts. They are really good though. 11 melee attack on a unit that you can get before the Barracks Event is a deadly unit. Granted, it's not effective against armor, but it is still something to be concerned about. These units, very similar to the crossbowmen, you can't leave them on the back line when you're letting them fire, because unlike crossbowmen, javelins have an even shorter range, unless you're the Elder Council of Merkel, but no one's going to talk about them. But yeah, you want these guys, again, like the crossbowmen, to go on the side, shoot their ammunition, but unlike the crossbowmen, who just have to keep shooting and shooting and shooting because that's all they can do, otherwise they're useless, once the Marines are out of ammunition, they are a extremely good flanking unit. They can fight head to head as well. They are really diverse. These Marines, very much like the Lindar Mariners, could be a flanking unit, could be a fully defensive unit, or could just be a trying to hold the line unit. They are really good. And if you can get upgraded ports early on in the game, you will be rewarded with your hard pittance with these mariners. But again, requires coastal regions. So once again, you need to have coastal regions. If you're starting as the Ar-Adunaim and are not starting an Umbar or any coastal region, you will find you have a slightly more trouble because you don't have these things in your life. These things do wonders for you. And that's all I'm going to say. Coastal units normally do better, especially when they come from the port itself. That's just because it makes you think, are these units worth getting? Or is it worth getting the base roster at a increased quantity? That's it. So now looking at the Ar-Adunaim, let's look at the Narduzagar. Again, like I said before, they are really powerful, not defending unit, but aggressive units. You have your aggressive unit, your defensive unit, your multitasking unit, and your ranged unit at the barracks event tier, in my opinion. Again, the Marines can come before them, but I do think they are on the first tier of barracks event troops because they are that good. So looking at their stats, really good attack, very similar to the Marines, but do have slightly more attack, slightly more charge, and slightly more defense. So they're better than the Marines in most cases, except they lose the free 10 missile attack javelins. That's all they lose. But in some cases where you need that bonus, you will find having the Marines and a mix between them and the Narduzagar is a good thing to have, because they are both really, really good. And then we have the Narduzarik. I honestly think this unit should come at this tier because they are overpowered. They are overpowered for their tier. The fact you can get them this early in the game as well, you can get them from you get one unit of them from turn 1. They're not just effective against armor with a 5 melee attack at base, which can go all the way up to 8 at golden chevrons, but they also have a total defense of 20. 20! Dwarven elites start surpassing 20, but they lose half of that against the Narduzarik, and that is something to be feared. There's not really much else to say about this unit other than they are slightly better Rosedon footmen, but they lose their ability to be effective against mounts. You find out at the early tier of barracks event, you are not good against mounts because you already have a large roster of effective against mount units. You don't really need any more of them until the late tier, which we'll go into very shortly. And then, like I said, as I've already mentioned again already, the Ar-Adunaim, they are a mix between late tier archers and early tier swordsmen, because they are actually close to the stats of the Azrael warriors, but they do lose out. But they do obviously these Ar-Adunaim are Narduzagar are better with their bows than anything else because they have a 6 melee missile attack, and for a human nation archer unit, that is really good. That is the peak of most human nation archers. Some factions like Dale, some Enerdwife units, and obviously the Dunedain surpass this, but compared to like orcs and dwarves that don't have crossbows, these Ar-Adunaim are going to be an extremely efficient unit once you start getting them. Yes, you've got the Azrael archers and the crossbowmen before this, but once you start getting into the late tier, you find out how good this Ar-Adunaim unit is, and they have a shield when they go into melee formation. So again, they can be a full melee unit after they've lost their ability to shoot. So unlike your crossbowmen, which can't fight hand to hand at all when they've lost all their ammunition, although the crossbowmen take forever to lose all their ammunition, so you never really see them out of ammunition. And your archers, which have crappy stats, these archers are a breath of life for the Ar-Adunaim, because you do need some really strong missile troops to make your defensive mechanics work really well with this. And then we look to the Uber tier, or the elite tier. We come into the Ubers and your general very soon. So here we have the Ar-Adunaim Armsmen. This is the unit I was talking about, the units that belong to your faction Air when you start the game. They used to be inspiring troops and frightening nearby enemies, but they were already too strong to be given them. So they've been restricted to only coastal regions, and they have 12 attack and 28 total defense. So merge the Narduzarik and merge the Narduzagar, and you get the Ar-Adunaim Armsmen. Yes, they lose their ability to be effective against armor. Yes, they lose a few of their attack stats, but they are so strong in holding the line. It's ridiculous. This is one of the few units that can actually multitask, similar to your Ar-Adunaim raiders. You can use them as a front line, as just to defend against anything. You can use them as a flanking unit. You can use them as a distraction unit. They are so effective. And again, like most of your stronger units, they can go into a shield wall formation to make them even bulkier. Now we come into the last unit which you've got, which is effective against armor, the Ar-Pharazon's Faithful. Now don't let that attack stat fool you. These are full-on pikemen, not like your halberdiers. These guys do really well in no matter what they're up against. This is the second strongest defensive unit you will have as the Ar-Adunaim, full stop. No other unit from any other faction, maybe the Gondor Fountain Guard, if you can make them, I can't remember. But if you can, the Ar-Pharazon's Faithful really give them a run for their money. Almost beating them, in fact. The only thing that stops them from being so strong is the fact that these units, unlike most of the other units, can be made anywhere. No restrictions. This is your most elite non-AOR unit. Use them to your leisure. You will never find a time you do not want Ar-Pharazon's Faithful. Yes, they don't have anti-armor like your halberdiers, but look at those stats. That defense stat is base. Put in the spear wall, this thing goes up tremendously. It's ridiculous. It goes up to nearly 13, approaching maybe 40 total defense once it's in its full spear wall and defending against things like cavalry. You will never find a time where you don't want these Ar-Pharazon's Faithful. I'm telling you now. If you ever find a time you don't want these Ar-Pharazon's Faithful around, you might need to look into how good they are and actually watch their progress in a battle, because they can hold the line forever and ever and ever. Then we look at your last elite archer units, slightly more aggressive than the Nar-Dubawib in battle, but you'll also find they are also potent in sword and board battle. But yes, they lose their shield, so they're not as strong in hand to hand for a long time. But of course, being rangers, they don't need to be in combat. 32 missiles, 220 meter range, very high accuracy compared to 30 missiles, 120 meters and high accuracy. So it's 2 extra ammunition, 30 meter range, and an increase in accuracy. This unit, also being AOR, I will add, because you can only get them from woodland and desert regions, you get this unit as your factionaire, and you would get a unit of Nar-Dubawib. You use these two together in unison, you have a strong combination of defense and strength combined together in your archers, and that is a terrifying threat. Nothing should be underestimated with these archers, because most rangers, once they've finished fighting with their shooting their bows, you find there's nothing else for them to do in most cases. But these Baruthios rangers are actually good at cleaning up excess units that are weak enough that you can beat them down, because you'll find the further you go up north into Gondor, this unit becomes less and less of an AOR unit. It starts becoming a key essential unit than an AOR unit. And I must admit, it is such a privilege to get to use both of these units in unison in the very beginning of the game, because they are so good. It's like playing at the Dunedain, but with, you know, Black Numenorians and Azrazair. And now we come to your royals. These, well, I'm calling them royals because you can only get them from specific locations I already talked about, places like Umbar, Minas Tirith, Fornost, Farbad, etc, etc. Well, very small, etc. So first of all, you have the Naru and Aru Royal Guard. And these boys, they are good. So lose a bit of strength, like the Ar-Adunaim armsmen normally have, but add additional defensive stats, inspire nearby troops, and they regain their ability to be skilled against mounts. These guys are beasts, and there's a reason your faction leader gets them as well. Unfortunately, unlike with your faction leader, you can deploy stakes, because these are your stake deploying units. For those that don't know, stakes were basically removed from the game because they were too overpowered against cavalry nations. Just a very few units are still able to use them. I think this is like one unit for each faction, but they are most likely AOR units or extremely expensive late game units. So the Nanu Inara House Royal Guard, having them makes them even better when you get them when you're fighting Rohan. If you can get these before fighting Rohan and just have a whole army of them, which will never happen, but if you could cheat the game somehow and make that happen, oh boy, you're gonna have a house full of fun and bloody horse corpses everywhere. Didn't want to add that, but yeah. But they can also perform a shield wall. Obviously, once they've placed the stakes and you start the battle, you can do that. But other than that, again, they are restricted. So once you have these, don't throw them away like you could with the Ar-Adunaim's Faithful, if that makes any sense. These guys you can make in massive numbers in the late game, and they are really strong. These household guards should be treated like, pretend you're Gollum and this is the ring. These Royal Guard and these Royal Knights, to say even more, these are your precious. You protect them with your life. Every time one of them is every time one of these Royal Guards are dead or Royal Knights are dead, you mourn for their loss and you name them and you make tombstones for them. I'm saying that now because they are that important to you. I cannot put enough pressure on that these units are so good, and even just one unit in them with their inspired troops effects makes them so good. And then we look at the opposite of them, your only cavalry unit, the Nanu and Aru Royal Knights. And unlike the Royal Guard, they do not inspire units, they put fear into the enemy army and they show them no quarter. So unfortunately, the only other units, going back to the Outer Zaire, they can inspire fear. The only other unit of yours that inspires fear from your main faction are the Royal Knights. So if you want to be causing fear to people, you will need the Savages until you can get to the barracks event and start making these Royal Knights. And again, very similar to how I use the Guardians of Khan Doom in my Angmar campaign, these are so precious to you. You do not want them dying if you can avoid it. Charge them in and try and get them out before the opponent can even realise that you've charged them in. Also, unlike the like most AOR cavalry units, these also are very deadly. Their base attack, their secondary attack, their swords, because obviously they have lancers. Unlike the Guardians of Khan Doom, these can puncture through so many more corpses than the Guardians of Khan Doom could, just because of their extra charge. And again, they frighten and they're skilled against mounts. These again are your only cavalry unit, and you need to take really good care of them because they are valuable. They are so valuable. Saffron Lancers, Serpent Guard from the Harad conscription camps, you can throw them away at your leisure. You can just keep making more of them. These things are so restricted. There's only like 10 places you can get them from, maybe even less than 10. And now we're up to the general, because I will feel my breath dying away. And there they are, Naru Household Guard. Originally, the character models for the Household Guard and the Royal Guard were changed from the originals when they were both in the Haven of Ungbar. This design, well, for the Household Guard used to be the Royal Guard, and the Royal Guard used to be the Household Guard. But they changed them around because the face masks make the Household Guard look even more menacing. And I must admit, they do it well. Back once upon a time, these things actually were also frightened nearby enemy infantry, so you just had even more frightening effects. But that was far too overpowered, so they dumbed it down and made these Household Guard more aggressive than the Royal Guard. Just a bit more aggressive with more attack and more charge, but obviously a reduction in numbers and little loss in total defense as well. But the shield is better too than the Royal Guard. So to arrows, these things take hardly any damage from arrow fire, and they last a long time. These are one of the most powerful generals in the game, in my honest opinion, and are to be, again, like most generals, treated with the utmost of care. So that is everything you need to know about the main faction, that is the Ar-Adunaim. Your first tier is your throwaway tier. You use them as garbage, fodder killer. The Savages are the one unit you want to consider all the time throughout the campaign. use them to decimate the enemy lines, but keep them away from the front line, because if they get charged, then they're losing out on their charge as well, and that makes them weaker. Warriors, they have no charge. Let them get charged. They will hold out for a lot longer than most other factions' early tier units. And your second tier is again like the Savages. The Hirondell Mercs are really good at flanking, but these units are all meant to be, well, except for the crossbowmen, these two are meant to hold the line. Your crossbowmen again are meant to flank. Your archers can sit in the back line and do whatever the hell they want because they're good archers, and the rest of them, you get even more flanking units and another strong defensive unit. Then you get a versatile unit, a defensive unit, and an aggressive archer unit, and then you get even more powerful defenses and flanking potential. So your main strengths, if I'm to say this out, if I'm to give you any good tips on how to play it on a battle map, is have really strong defensive units holding your front line away from, or keeping your opponent's front line busy, while your flanking units attack them, because this faction has more flanking units than most. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flanking units altogether. Granted, most cavalry are flanking units, but altogether 6 non-cavalry flanking units. You are meant to use high level strategy. They're not an easy faction to play with, not by a long shot, because you have no early cavalry, so you lose out on that strong beginning, and you have rather weak archers and very high strategy requirement crossbowmen, which does make this faction harder than most. If you ever want to start playing Divide and Conquer and if you don't know where to turn, Gondor is a good place to start in my honest opinion, and I think we'll be looking into Gondor in the next video. And that is why, if you just hand all these guys over to the AI to have them battle for a bit, if I can point a group, hand over to the AI, and you can see I had them fight against a Gondor army. And as you can see, very similar to the Ar-Adunaim, they are very heavily armoured, but unlike the Ar-Adunaim, they have a few more defensive, they are more defensive, because obviously they are the last bastion against Mordor. They need to be defensive. But we'll talk about everything that Gondor is capable of in the next video. So let's just speed up the chaos that's about to ensue, as the Ar-Adunaim just die to all the trebuchet shots from the trebuchets of Gondor. So I hope you've all enjoyed this. Hope it's been insightful. Hope you've enjoyed listening to my long ramblings and tips and tricks on how to play as the Ar-Adunaim in the current version of Divide and Conquer version 2.2. And I hope these tips will still last long into 2.3 as well. There goes our general. Well, I think we'll call it there then. Hope you all enjoyed, and ta-ta for now.